Hello, my name is Janet Stegman, and I'm the host of World War II Heroes. I would like to introduce our very special guest, Lieutenant Edwin Stegman, my father. Welcome, Dad.
Glad to be here.
My father has been telling me stories about World War II since I was born. And I grew up with them, and it's enriched my life so much I can't tell you. And so I wanted to bring him on and have him tell some of his stories. But before we do that, people are always curious, yeah, well, what has he done lately? So tell everybody what you do now.
Well, I'm a lawyer, a trial lawyer.
Okay. Very good. And you tell them about your law practice?
Well, yeah, I practice along West Los Angeles.
You're still a practitioner?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Full-time practice.
Do you feel that your experience in the military helped prepare you for a law practice?
I think all life's experience helped you for law practice, right? Yes, it did. It was a very, I wouldn't want to go through it again, but it was a very important part of my life.
You know how I think one major way that it affected you is that you're not afraid of anything. No judge intimidates you, no attorney intimidates you, nothing intimidates you.
Well, when you're getting shot at every 3 days, not too many things will intimidate you after that. Getting shot at with big cannons.
Exactly, I can only imagine. It'll put hair on your chest, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, why don't you first tell us where you were stationed?
Okay, and my mission, huh?
And your mission, yeah.
Okay. I was stationed on the most advanced Allied base in the South Pacific, the island of Morotai. We had only had a peninsula 1 mile wide and 10 miles long with 2 airstrips. There were 8,000 Japanese soldiers on the island with us, and 80,000 Japanese soldiers on the big island of Halmahera, 11 miles across the strait. And we flew the longest bomb missions in the world. We flew B-24s. It was the 13th Air Force. And Borneo was the 3rd largest island in the world. And the Japanese were getting a lot of their petroleum from Borneo. And our job was to try to interdict the flow of oil from Borneo to Japan, and also to attack their oil fields and refineries and tankers, things like that. As I say, our bomb missions were 12 to 14 hours in the air.
Now, tell them what was your job in the Army Air Corps?
I was a bombardier.
Okay.
We flew B-24s, 10-man crews, had a pilot and a co-pilot, a navigator, a bombardier, a radio operator, an engineer, and 4 gunners.
Okay.
I guess that adds up to 10.
That's good. And
we were all gunners, though, when we were on a bomb run.
I remember you telling me that you were trained in all of the different jobs.
I learned every job on my plane.
And why was that? Why did they?
Well, because somebody might get killed or injured, and I was the armament officer on the airplane, and I had to supervise the enlisted men on our plane, the gunners, and I had to know their job to supervise them.
Right.
To see that they were doing it right.
Right, and let's say one of the gunners was shot through the airplane, you would have to go right there and take his place, right?
Right.
Because you could do that and navigate and
yes.
Drop the bombs.
All navigator might be killed, and we're 1,000 miles over the Pacific. I'd have to bring us home.
Could you have driven the plane, flown the plane?
Oh yeah, I knew how to fly the plane.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Okay, go on with your story about where you were stationed. And
well, that was, we were on this little island of Morotai, which was across the strait from the island of Halmahera. And there was a destroyer in the strait 24 hours a day with its radar going to protect us from the 80,000 Japanese on the island of Halmahera. And there were 8,000 Australian troops on the head of the peninsula where we were to protect us from the 8,000 Japanese soldiers on the island. There were 2,500 of us on this peninsula and 8,000 Japanese. I didn't realize till after the war, until I started thinking about this show, I realized how much danger I was in.
8,000 troops?
Yeah.
How do you say it? 8,000 troops? Is that how you say it?
8,000 soldiers. I slept right near the beach. And I had a .45 hanging in a holster over my head, cocked,
Oh my gosh.
in case some unfriendly people come up on the beach.
Now you talked a lot about the Aussies.
Yeah.
Now explain, what
Well,
they were
they
doing
were
there.
Australian troops. They were our allies in the war, and Australia, was threatened by the Japanese, and they protected us. There was I guess a regiment of Australian troops on the island to protect us. All we had was the Army Air Corps of the United States, mechanics and air crews and things like that.
Now you talk about the Aussie lifestyle being different from the American lifestyle. Do you
Oh,
want
yeah.
to tell about that?
It sure was. First of all their equipment, like their radios and everything, were 20 years behind ours in sophistication. And they had never seen popped corn. We popped some corn for them, and it almost blew their minds. They didn't have raincoats, they had rain capes. And when we took a shower, we had a great big cement floor outdoors. And we had showers. We'd go out there and we'd turn on a faucet and we could shower out there in the open. But the Aussies, the poor Aussies, they had to carry buckets to their showers and climb up a ladder and put the water in a tank. And then they could go, fill the tank, and then they could pull a chain and take a shower.
And you just turned on the faucet.
They had never seen a pickle. They had pickle relish, but they'd never seen a pickle. They went wild over pickles.
Oh my goodness. Okay, and tell me about when Morotai was fogged in.
Okay. We went on a bombing mission to Borneo, and when we got back, our Morotai was completely fogged in. And there's mountains all around. Not real high mountains, but high enough that if you run into it, you'll die. So we couldn't very well come down and land in that pea soup fog. So we were anticipating bailing, either ditching our plane in the ocean or bailing out over the water. And by the way, those are shark-infested waters near the equator. Well, at the last...
What were you going to do? Just jump out with a parachute?
Yeah, right. Or we're going to try, that's probably what we're going to do. Either that or the pilot's going to try and ditch the plane.
What does that mean?
Well, land it on the water. But those planes were so heavy with armor plate and, guns and bomb racks that more likely it would immediately go right to the bottom.
Of the ocean?
Yeah, it was pretty deep right there, yeah. So probably we would have bailed out and then hoped to be rescued. But at the last minute, the base commander turned on these huge spotlights, waving around in the sky, And boy, oh boy, then we saw our base, our landing strip, and we landed.
You must have been ecstatic.
Yes, I was.
Now, I think you told me that he could have gotten in really big trouble for that.
Yeah, it was against the rules because it could invite a Japanese bombing attack, but he didn't want to lose his whole bomb squadron.
Wow. And why didn't the Japanese attack when they...
Well, they missed an opportunity, I guess.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Wow.
And as I recall, too, we ran out of gas on the airstrip. We had to be towed off the airstrip.
Oh my God! On the airstrip, you ran out of gas.
When we landed, as soon as we put touchdown, we were out of gas. We couldn't taxi. So if we'd have circled a little longer, we would have had to jump out.
Oh my gosh! There are no accidents. Somebody was watching over you.
I suppose.
Tell us about the train ride from Los Angeles to Lincoln, Nebraska.
Well, the Southern Pacific Railroad goes across the southern United States, and it's a single track. And so during the war, they resurrected every piece of railroad equipment back to the Civil War. And that track was bumper to bumper in both directions, because the trains went in both directions on the same single track. And so when we went back we were going to go to Lincoln, Nebraska for primary training, we would travel a little ways on the track, then we have to go onto a siding, while more important trains went by, carrying munitions and gun parts and all. Trains would go by. And then we would go on and travel a little more on that single track until we had to go back on a siding. I think it took us several weeks. As I recall, we were just hanging around to get from LA to Nebraska.
Now, how long, if you had gone straight there on the same track, how long would it have taken you?
I don't know, 10 hours, 18 hours.
It took you
most
several
one day.
weeks?
Yeah, as I recall now. I don't remember how long, but we were there. We were
What did you
hanging
do all
out
day?
on this train.
What did you do all day on the train, waiting?
Well, we read, we had books, and we played poker, and shot the breeze, played chess.
Huh. Oh, wow. Now, when you'd go onto the side track, you'd just sit there,
Right.
right, and waiting for the other
Trains
to
going
come.
by. Right. All the trains were going in two directions on the same track at the same time.
So there's one track
Right.
with a train going this way and a train going this way.
Right.
And so,
I think it's still that way.
is that right?
Yeah.
And how do we avoid, you know, train wrecks?
Well, they don't always, but they have a system for putting the trains onto sidings.
So we know, so we monitor where the train is
Right.
and when.
The railroad does, yeah.
Oh, my goodness. You have told me a story about one of your most brilliant moments, which I love, and it was, tell the other train story that I love.
Oh. Well, in this world, you have to be a problem solver sometimes. When I graduated from bombardier school in Deming, New Mexico, we got a 30-day leave. And so we were going to go home. Most of us came from LA or Southern California. We were going to go home. So we went down, we all dressed up in our new lieutenant's uniforms, and we went down to the train station. And there were, I think, how many I told you, it was 212 of us, 180, something like that. And plus there were town people that wanted to take a train, go somewhere, and other employees of the base, other soldiers on the air base. Well, when we got there, the train came in. I think it was one train a day for a passenger train for the public. The train came in, and the conductor opened the top half of those split doors, you know, and he says, "This train is overloaded. We have too many people now. They're standing in the aisles, and I can't take on any more passengers." Well, we were really anxious to go home. And so the guys in the front were arguing with the conductor. And you know, the thing of it is, the next day when a train came in, it'd probably be the same way. So they were arguing with him. So I said, I said to my friend, my buddy, I said, you know something, even if those guys talk the conductor and letting a few people on, we're not going to get on because we're in the middle of the pack here. So I'd come with me. So we ran the full length of the train, went around the other side, and we saw the top half of a door open. So I boosted him up, and he unlatched the bottom half, and we opened the door, and we climbed on. And we're the only ones out of maybe 400 or 500 people to do that. So after the train started up, but not before the train started up, started moving, I crossed to the other side of the train and opened the door and waved goodbye to my friends. And they said, "Stegman, how the hell
You can say it, it's okay.
Stegman, you son of a bitch, how the hell did you get on that train?" Because they saw nobody got on the train. The conductor didn't let anybody on.
Right.
So there's a little problem
So you
solving.
waved goodbye to them?
Yeah. So that's a little,
No foreshadowing of a career to come.
yeah,
Right.
problem solving.
Exactly.
Right.
Now, you told me that in your spare time, your off hours, when you'd go into town, a officer in uniform was greeted by the civilian women.
Oh, well, we were when we were at Lincoln Air Base for I forget what I call it now. Anyway, primary training, and then from there, I guess they weren't ready at the flying schools for us. They didn't room, so they wanted to do something with us, and they wanted to educate us. And you had to be pretty well educated to be a member of a flight crew. Navigator, bombardier, pilot. And so they sent us to Drake University, which was in Des Moines, Iowa, and they called it College Training Detachment for 4 months. Well, in Des Moines, there were no men. all the men had been drafted. There was no military base except a WAC base where there were 14,000 women Army Corps soldiers. And Drake University had, I think, like 8 men and 1,500 women, because everybody was drafted. And there was no industry in Des Moines except one small factory that made tailpipes for airplanes. So the headlines in the Des Moines Tribune were 400 cadets coming to Des Moines to relieve manpower shortage. And when we got there, it was amazing. They didn't. It's a dry state. Des Moines, Iowa was a dry state.
Tell our viewers what a dry state means.
They're not allowed to sell liquor. Of course, it was also a corrupt state because they had private clubs that sold liquor, and they were wide open. But so they had around the
during Prohibition. What year was this?
Prohibition, 1942. But Prohibition, right?
So some states.
It was a dry state.
Some states were dry states, and some states were wet states.
Right, until they amended the United States Constitution to make all states dry states.
Okay.
That was Prohibition, about 1918 or 19. Okay. So, but they had.
Well, was this when all states were dry states?
No. After.
In 1942.
After the 18th and 19th Amendment in 1919.
Oh, they repealed it.
Well, they repealed it in the 1930s.
Okay.
When Roosevelt became president.
Okay.
They repealed it. Well, and Prohibition spawned all those gangsters, you know, like all the gangsters that we had, the smugglers. Anyway, so. But they had a lot of malt shops or ice cream parlors around there. And we would go in, when we arrived, we would go in, oh, yeah, we were wearing cadet uniforms, you know, and it was...
You're in good shape because you've been
we were
training.
Right, that's right.
You've been outside a lot, so you're all tan.
And we had to pass a rigorous physical to get into the Air Force.
But then they physically train you, don't they?
Right.
You have to...
Yeah, we were in good shape. And we wore, and you know, the uniforms were glamorous in that time. We were heroes, you know, already. So we would go into an ice cream parlor, and there would be girls, 5 or 6 girls sitting in a booth, and we could sit down and take all their names and phone numbers. It would all give them to us. And on a Sunday, we were stationed in like a former telephone exchange they converted into barracks, and some of us were in a former furniture store they'd made into barracks. So Sunday we would come down, and there would be a whole line of cars all around the block, 2 girls in each car, and any of us could get in any car and spend the Sunday. So it was
and it was quite an honor for them.
it was a feast.
For
for single guys, a feast.
It did a lot, boosted your self-confidence.
Sure did. Yeah.
Tell me about the military gangs hijacking.
Well, after the war, in Manila Harbor, they had cargo ships, supply ships, and they had lighters. Lighters are small boats, cargo boats, to carry. Some ships could go up to a pier and unload, to a dock and unload their wares. Like a lot of in the military, they didn't have those facilities always, so they would unload their freighters, their supply ships, with these small boats, and carry them to the shore. Well, a lot of the soldiers, former soldiers, I guess soldiers, formed gangs, and they would hijack these lighters and steal them, hijack the cigarettes and beer and whatever.
These are former soldiers.
These are soldiers that had been fighting a little while before, right?
Wow.
Mm-hmm. They did.
And there was a time that you had to avoid gunfire?
Well, my navigator and I decided to go to Manila for the weekend, which was 50 or 60 miles away, and we got a Jeep. Those Jeeps were 4-wheel drive, would go anywhere. Mm-hmm. The Jeeps won the war, really, to tell you the truth. But anyway, we started on this highway to Manila, and we could see ahead of us somewhere at an intersection there was a gunfight going on. A wild gunfight.
Who was it between?
Well, we don't know. Just a big gunfight.
Who could it have been between?
Well, it might have been former soldiers, bandits. There were a lot of bandits too. and you know, smugglers, everything. So we took our Jeep, went off the road onto a farm, and went some ways on the farm and bypassed that intersection, came back on the road and went to Manila.
Oh. You were very ingenious, I must admit.
Well, we weren't going to go into the
You weren't going to go through it, huh?
No, we're going to go into the teeth of the gunfire.
Okay, tell the time when Danny Kaye came to perform.
Well, that was one of the most unjust things that ever happened in the military. We had a big amphitheater.
Where was this?
I guess it was on the island of Biak before we got to Morotai, as I recall. And Danny Kaye, it might have been on Morotai, but I think it was but Danny Kaye was coming for the USO show. So the guys were so excited, some of them would go to the mess hall and get a dinner in a bag, you know, a brown bag dinner or lunch, and they would go down to the amphitheater to get good seats. The show was going to be like at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, 7. So they went down at like 3, 4 o'clock, and they took dinner and like books and chess sets and stuff to get a good seat. So after 3 or 4 hours of waiting for the show, 2 MPs showed up just before the show, like about 6:30, 7 o'clock. And they said, now the amphitheater is full. I mean, there must have been 5,000 or 10,000 people at an amphitheater. There was no seats left. Up on the top of the hill, it might have been a seat, but you couldn't see the stage from there without binoculars. But anyway, so these 2 MPs said, we have orders to clear out the second row for the commanding officer and his party. Well, we all became outraged. I wasn't in the second row. We were probably in the 5th, 6th row. But if they had cleared out that row, you know, in advance, sealed it off. Want to borrow my coat?
Go ahead.
If they had sealed off that row, in the beginning, there'd been no problem. But after these guys had waited 3, 4, 5 hours to get good seats to tell them that they would have to leave, and now there's no place for them to go. They'd have to leave. They're going to go up the top of the hill where they couldn't even see the show. So they resisted, and we all backed them up. I mean, there was almost a big riot. So finally, the 2 MPs couldn't get anywhere. And don't forget, we were not namby-pambies. We were combat troops, you know. We were used to being shot at and shooting people. We weren't sissies. So the guys wouldn't move. And so they sent about 6 MPs came, or 8 or 10. And they finally forcibly took some of the guys out. And we were all screaming and yelling and arguing with them and everything. And as soon as they cleared out a few guys would fill in behind them. So finally, the officer of the day, the major, shows up with a truckload of MPs. And that almost precipitated a riot. I remember I was one of the troublemakers arguing with the major, you know. And my pilot too, Dale, was arguing with, we were vociferous, and people were yelling and screaming, and they were threatening. I mean, the whole amphitheater practically was in revolt.
Were they throwing things?
Yeah, they weren't throwing bricks or anything. They were throwing paper and, you know, stuff. They weren't doing anything dangerous, but so finally they managed to clear out that row. They had enough to, and the major would say, arrest that man. You know, the guy behind him, up a few seats up, was yelling and threatening, you know, and really they were screaming. Arrest that man. They took a whole truckload away, and they finally cleared out that row. And the thing about it was, the commanding officer and his party never showed up.
I think they were smart.
Yeah, I think they were.
They would have got hit in the back of the head with a lot of tomatoes.
Well, never mind tomatoes, they got hit in the back of the head with a brick
Something.
or a rock.
Oh my goodness. Well, was the show good?
Oh yeah, it was great. A lot of girls. Oh, we all loved it. Yeah.
With an empty second row.
Empty
It
second.
never filled in?
Nope.
Even
Well,
when
they had
didn't-
MPs there the whole time, a whole squadron of them.
Oh my gosh. All right. My very favorite.
That was one of the greatest injustices I've ever seen in my life. So unfair.
Okay. Tell, we have 3 minutes, so I would like you to tell your pet peeve, your name being Stegman with an S.
S starts with, that's right. My pet peeve is, that's another great injustice of this world. We were always told, line up in alphabetical order. Whether you're going to get uniforms or boots or haircuts or whatever you're going to get, line up in alphabetical order. So Abrams and Abramowitz and Ashley, they would get their uniforms, their haircuts, their shots, and go back to the barracks. And you know,
play chess,
sack in or play chess, right, or play poker. Where Stegman and Wilson and we would have to stand in the snow for 2 or 3 hours. Nobody in the history of the armed forces of the world ever said to a group of soldiers, to my knowledge, okay, you guys line up in reverse alphabetical order. Never. So that's one of the most unfair things.
Greatest injustice of the entire war, isn't it?
One of the greatest injustices. Nobody ever had the imagination, the sense of fairness to say, okay, you guys line up in reverse alphabetical order.
I'm so sorry. Well, listen, we have to stop.
Okay.
I want to thank you so much for coming onto my show.
It was a pleasure.
I absolutely love your stories. They're so precious. And,
Thank
you know,
you.
there are not too many World War II veterans around to tell
No.
these stories. So
No, that's right.
You are just so precious.
Well,
I appreciate
I'm
it.
glad to be here.
I'm glad you're still around.
Yeah, thank you. I am too.
So,
So, and I'm going to get a hold of, I tracked down my navigator and our engineer. I'm going to call them.
Are you?
Soon. Yeah, I'm going to talk to them, if they're still alive.
oh my gosh. How do you know where they are?
Well, I tracked them down, and I knew from where their hometowns were, from when where we were flying together.
So do you think you could get a hold of them?
Oh
You
yeah,
should have
I
like
looked.
a reunion.
I checked information. I have their phone numbers.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I'm going to call them.
Fantastic. So all in all, you feel it was a very enriching experience?
Oh yes, it was, and I want you to know that we came very close to losing World War II, especially in the Pacific.
Okay, they can't hear us anymore.
What?
They can't hear us anymore.
Oh,
But if
okay.
you use a lot of hand signals,